Hello, Jima. I see you're enjoying the new, emote that I put. So in the background, you guys do hear music. That is the Dead by Daylight music that we have. My camera's not on. Just when I thought I had everything figured out. Oy vey. Leave it to me. Yep, just when I think I have everything figured. Oh my god, that's big. You know, today isn't going the way it's supposed to in general, so that's apparently what type of day it is today. Now I have to move this all the way to the back. Now if I put this back here, there we go. There I am. Hi. So, today we are reading stories, ladies and gentlemen. I hope the music isn't too loud for everybody. So, we are starting. Oh, my camera is really big. I'm really close to my own camera. So, welcome to the lore of the Dead by Daylight killers. Thank you! I'm glad you do. I had so much fun making this for this specifically. So, we're starting with the first 11 killers. Starting with the Trapper. Now, I will say, for all of you who are watching, the, there it is. That's really loud. We're gonna turn that down a little bit, just a little bit. So, as you guys can see, Blurp wanted to play your walk on twice. It's fine. So, as you guys can see, we have two versions of the killer at the moment. You see the Trapper, Evan McMillan, and then you see him as if he was possessed by Ashforia. That is how I have the images here. You will see one of the killer themselves and one of the possessed version of them as Ashforia. Now, we shall begin. Starting with Evan McMillan, the Trapper. Evan McMillan was the son of a wealthy industrialist, Archibald McMillan, owner of the McMillan estate, and its profitable gold mines. The McMillan family built a fortune on hard labor, exploitation, and control over their workers. Evan grew up privileged, but emotionally hardened, raised under a father who valued dominance and reputation above human life. As profits began to decline, Archibald became increasingly desperate to preserve the family's name. In a calculated act of cruelty, he ordered the coal mines sealed while workers were still inside, burying them alive to collect insurance money and avoid a public scandal. The official story blamed a tragic accident. When Evan learned what his father had done, he did not react with horror. He reacted with approval. He believed that the act showed strength, but also felt his father had grown weak in other ways. Evan had long displayed violent tendencies, often brutalizing animals and eventually workers on the estate. After the mine accident, his behavior escalated. Workers began disappearing. Rumors spread that Evan stalked the estate at night, hunting those he believed were disloyal or unworthy. He developed a fixation on control and punishment, using brutal methods, eventually crafting a heavy bear trap to immobilize his victims. The estate became a place of terror. Archibald eventually realized Archibald eventually realized his son became uncontrollable. Fearful that Evan would destroy the Macmillan name eventually, he plotted against him. On the night of the confrontation, violence erupted. The estate was set ablaze, mines collapsed, both father and son disappeared during the chaos. Evan was never found. Instead, the entity claimed him. Drawn by his brutality and obsession with dominance, it pulled him into the fog. There, he became the Trapper, a towering killer who uses iron traps to control and torture survivors, forever recreating the cruelty he inherited and embraced. That was the story of the Trapper. Next, we have the Wraith, Philip Ajormo. Philip Ajormo was born in Nigeria and experienced hardship from a young age. After witnessing violence and instability in his homeland, he eventually immigrated to the United States, seeking a better life there. He found work at auto slave yard run by a man named Arzov. The job seemed simple: crush cars and dispose of scrap. Philip worked long hours operating car crushers, believing he had finally found some steady employment and stability. He kept to himself, avoiding trouble, and focused on surviving. Over time, however, he began to notice disturbing irregularities. Some of the cars brought in showed signs of damage beyond accidents: bullet holes, blood stains, signs of struggle. Philip questioned it, but continued working, choosing not to pry too deeply into matters that did not concern him. One night, while operating the crusher, Philip heard something unusual, banging from inside one of the vehicles. He shut the machine down and forced the door open. Inside was a man, still alive. Philip, horrified by the truth, the wrecking yard was being used to dispose of bodies. The cars he had been crushing weren't just scrap, they were coffins. He had unknowingly been compliant in murder. When Arzov arrived and attempted to justify the operation, Philip's restraint shattered. In a surge of rage and betrayal, he attacked and killed his employer, beating him to death with his bare hands. For the first time, Philip chose violence deliberately. But that act changed him. The weight of what he had done and what he had unknowingly helped do consumed him. Something inside him fractured. The quiet, reserved man who wanted peace was replaced by something hollow and furious. Soon after, the entity drew him into the fog. In the realm, Philip would become the Wraith, cloaked, silent, and driven by a distorted sense of justice and vengeance. He carried the bell taken from Azarov's body, using it to phase in and out of visibility. Once a man who wanted only honest work and autonomy, he now stalks his victims unseen, striking from invisibility as punishment for sins, both theirs and his own. Max Thompson Jr., the Hillbilly. Max Thompson Jr. was born from wealthy landowners in a large rural farm. From birth, he suffered from severe physical deformities. His appearance horrified his parents, who saw him not as a child, but as a disgrace. Rather than seek help or show compassion, they hid him. Max was locked away in an upper floor of the farmhouse. He was enchained, isolated, and neglected. His parents told neighbors he died at birth. For years, he lived in darkness, barely fed, never educated, never shown affection. The only sound he knew were animals outside and muffled voices of the family who pretended he did not exist. As he grew older, his strength increased. So did his rage. His parents began to see a use for him. They would release him at night to slaughter livestock, keep him hidden from the public, while exploiting his brutal strength. Max learned violence not through cruelty of his own design, but through conditioning. Killing was the only skill he was allowed to develop. Eventually, the isolation and abuse reached a breaking point. One night, Max escaped the chains. Fueled by years of torment, he killed his parents. He turned on the farmhands and everyone else who came near the property. The farmhouse became a site of massacre. Authorities discovered the carnage days later. The property was soaked in blood, bodies laying scattered across the land, but Max Thompson Jr. was gone. The entity claimed him. In the fog, he became the hillbilly, a feral, relentless killer driven by distorted pain and unsuppressed rage. He wields a heavy hammer and a chainsaw, tools, resentment of the farm that he was imprisoned. His speed and aggression reflect a lifetime of confinement suddenly unleashed. Max was never taught humanity, only violence. In the entity's realm, that's all he continues to know. Hydrate and a snack. Thanks, Gma. Sally Smithson, the nurse. We'll get to Sally's when I'm done chewing. Sally Smithson worked as a nurse at Crotus Penn Asylum, a notorious mental institution known for overcrowding, neglect, and unethical treatments of its patients. She was not cruel by nature. In fact, she was known... Sorry, I heard the music and my brain went, oh my god, who am I running from? In fact, she was known for her quiet compassion and dedication. While other staff members grew indifferent to suffering around them, Sally tried to comfort those in her care. The asylum, however, was a place of corruption. Patients were abused, restrained for long periods, and subject to harsh treatments, meant more to control than heal. The administration prioritized order and reputation over humanity. Over time, the relentless exposure to suffering took a toll on Sally. She witnessed daily torment and had little power to stop it. When her husband died, she returned to work burdened by grief, exhaustion, and isolation. Her emotional state deteriorated under the weight of loss and cruelty that surrounded her. Eventually, something in her broke. Sally began suffocating patients with pillows, believing she was releasing them from the misery. In her fractured state of mind, she saw her actions as acts of mercy, ending the suffering where the institution would not. One by one, patients died under her care. Her behavior grew more erratic and unstable. The asylum admission took notice. Before they could formally deal with Sally, she vanished. The entity claimed her from the halls of the asylum. Within the fog, she became the nurse, a spectral, anguished figure who glides unnaturally through the air. Her ability to blink through walls reflects her own detachment from reality and the boundaries she once crossed between care and cruelty. The sounds of labored breathing echo her final, suffocating acts. Sally Smithson believed she was easing the pain. In the entity's realm, that belief is twisted into an endless pursuit where mercy and murder are no longer distinguishable for her. Michael Myers, The Shape. Michael Myers was born into a quiet suburban town of Haddonfield, Illinois. On Halloween night in 1963, at just 6 years old, he murdered his older sister, Judith Myers, by stabbing her repeatedly in their home. When his parents returned home, they found him standing silently outside in his clown costume, mask still on. He showed no emotion, no panic, no remorse. He was institutionalized at Smith's Grove Sanatorium under the care of psychiatrist Dr. Sam Loomis. For years, Loomis attempted to reach the boy, searching for trauma, explanation, or humanity. Instead, he found nothing. Loomis later described looking into Michael's eyes and seeing pure evil. Michael never spoke. For 15 years, he remained at the institution, silent, watchful, waiting. Then, on October 30th, 1978, he escaped. He returned to Haddonfield. He began stalking Laurie Strode and her friends. He killed without motive, without hesitation, and without any clear pattern beyond proximity and opportunity. He did not kill out of rage. He did not kill out of revenge. He killed because he chose to. Michael displays no identifiable emotion, no discernible personality, and no understandable goal. He moves slowly, deliberately, and with absolute certainty. Even when injured, he rises again. Bullets, falls, and wounds slow him, but they do not stop him. He is referred to simply as the Shape because he lacks defying human qualities. He is less a person and more a presence, a force that manifests evil. At some point between all his massacres, the entity took notice. A being defined by not trauma, manipulation, or madness, but by emptiness. By the absence of humanity. The fog claimed him. Within the entity's realm, Michael continues as the Shape, silent, patient, and relentless. He stalks, he watches, and when the moment is right, he strikes. There is no reasoning with him, no appeal to conscience. He does not speak, he does not explain. He simply is. Lisa Sherwood, the Hag. Lisa Sherwood grew up in a small, impoverished village where her family struggled to survive. Despite hardship, she was close to her mother and lived in a relatively quiet life. Her mother often warned her about the dangers of nearby swamp and the strange people who sometimes passed through town. One day, while Lisa was out gathering supplies, a group of cannibals attacked her village. They slaughtered her family and abducted her. She was taken deep into the swamp and held captive in a decaying shack. The cannibals did not kill her immediately. Instead, they tortured her slowly. They carved symbols into her skin, starved her, and forced her to watch as they consumed parts of her body. Over time, Lisa was mutilated and left barely alive. The trauma and prolonged starvation pushed her to the brink of death. But survival instinct took over fear. In a desperate act, Lisa bit into one of her captors and consumed his flesh. The act awakened something primal within her. Fueled by rage and hunger, she escaped her restraints, killing the remaining captives, feeding on them to stay alive. By the time authorities discovered the swamp, the shack was filled with corpses and ritual markings. Lisa Sherwood was gone. The entity claimed her from the wilderness. Within the fog, she became the Hag, a twisted skeletal figure driven by feral instinct and insatiable hunger. The symbols she once carved into her skin became tools of power, allowing her to create phantasmal traps that trigger when survivors step near them. Her emaciated appearance reflects the starvation she endured, and her predatory behavior mirrors the survival methods she was forced to adapt. Lisa Sherwood was not born a monster. She was broken, starved, and reshaped by cruelty. In the entity's realm, she remains suspended in that final transformation, forever hunting, forever hungry. Herman Carter, the Doctor. Herman Carter was a brilliant but deeply disturbed neuroscientist. From an early stage in his career, he showed little regard for ethics, focusing instead on pushing the limits of human cognition and control. His work eventually drew the attention of the CIA, which recruited him into a secret program known as Project MKUltra. Sorry, give me a minute. Vic is texting me. He's at the terminal, Jima. Under this program, Carter was given near total freedom to conduct experiments on unwilling human subjects. The goal was to explore mind control, psychological manipulation, and the breaking point of human sanity. Carter thrived in this environment. While others saw mortal boundaries, he saw obstacles to be removed. His methods were extreme, to say the least, using high-voltage electroshock therapy, sensory deprivation, and chemical experimentation. Carter sought to dismantle the human mind piece by piece. He wasn't interested in healing or understanding. He wanted to dominate consciousness itself. Patients driven into madness, their identities shattered under his relentless procedures. Over time, Carter became less concerned with results and more obsessed with the process. He took pleasure in watching his subjects deteriorate, carefully observing their descent into insanity. His work grew increasingly erratic, and even his handlers began to question his stability. Eventually, his experiments culminated into a complete psychological collapse, not just for his subjects, but Carter himself. During one of his final sessions, the faculty descended into chaos. The facility descended into chaos. Patients were left screaming, staff were found dead or unresponsive, and Carter vanished without a trace. The entity claimed him. Within the fog, Carter became the Doctor, a sadistic figure who weaponized madness itself. Electricity crackled from his body, and his presence deteriorating reality from those around him. Survivors experienced hallucinations, paranoia, and uncontrolled screams, mirroring the torments he once inflicted. Herman did not seek knowledge for progress. He sought control. And in the entity's realm, he was given that, an endless supply of minds to break. Anna, the Huntress. Fun fact for everybody who doesn't know, the Huntress was actually the inspiration for Ashforia's look. That's why she has her half-rabbit mask. The Huntress is my favorite. I love her so much. I know this story like the back of my hand. Anna was born in the wilderness of northern Russia, the daughter of a woman who survived living off the land. Her mother taught her how to hunt, track, and endure brutal environments. They lived isolated from society, relying only on each other. From a young age, Anna learned that survival is silence and patience. She watched her mother hunt with skill and precision, and in time began to imitate her. The forest became her home. The outside world remained distant and unfamiliar. During a harsh winter, while her mother was out hunting, soldiers passed through the region. Her mother did not return. Anna went searching for her, eventually found her mother's body in the snow. She was killed by an elk she was hunting. Anna was left completely alone. Still a child, she was forced to survive on her own. She adapted, using what her mother had taught her. Over time, she grew into a powerful, capable hunter, but her isolation shaped her mind. Without human contact, her understanding of the world became distorted. She developed a fixation on children, especially young girls. At times, Anna would encounter people who entered her territory of the Red Forest. If they had young girls with them, she would kill the adults and take the children back home, attempting to care for them as her mother cared for her. However, she lacked the proper ability to nurture them. The children would eventually die from neglect, exposure, or fear. Each loss built resentment, loneliness, and confusion. She wore a rabbit mask that was connected to her childhood that her mother had made her. She hummed lullabies reminiscent of the songs her mother once sung, echoing through the forest as she hunted. Over time, she became a legend of the region. A silent figure in the woods, a protector to no one, a threat to all. Eventually, the entity claimed her. Within the fog, she became the Huntress, a relentless predator who uses hatchets with deadly precision. Her humming persists, a haunting lullaby that signals both comfort and danger. Though she once sought family, in the entity's realm, she's trapped in the endless hunt, a repeating cycle of loss and isolation that defied her life. Bubba Sawyer, the cannibal. Bubba Sawyer, also known as Leatherface, was born to the Sawyer family, a deeply disturbed and cannibalistic household living in rural Texas. Raised in an environment defined by violence, manipulation, and brutality, Bubba was never given the chance to develop a normal sense of identity or morality. From a young age, he was abused, controlled by his family. They treated him like he was less than a person and more like a tool. Due to his mental impairment and emotional instability, Bubba became completely dependent on them. He was taught that killing and butchering people was not only acceptable, but necessary for survival. The Sawyer family used him as their primary enforcer. Bubba wears masks made of human skin representing each role or personality, a coping mechanism shaped by trauma and his fractured psyche. Without these masks, he lacks a clear sense of self. With them, he becomes whoever his family needed him to be. Under their direction, Bubba hunted and killed travelers who wandered a little too close to their property. He used a chainsaw as his primary weapon, both for killing and for processing bodies, reinforcing his role as the family's butcher. Despite the violence, Bubba's behavior often showed signs of fear and confusion. He did not act out of personal malice or ambition, but out of obedience and conditioning. His world was small, controlled entirely by the expectations of his family. At some point, the entity took notice. A killer shaped not by choice, but by upbringing. A man who did not understand the horror of what he was doing, only that he was meant to do it. The fog claimed him. Within the entity's realm, Bubba became the cannibal. Continuing his role he was forced into, armed with his chainsaw, driven by ingrained instinct. He hunts endlessly. There is no family guiding him now, no voices directing his actions, but the conditioning remains. He does not question. He does not stop. He simply does what he was raised to do. Freddy Krueger, the Nightmare. Freddy Krueger was the son of a nun who was assaulted by groups of inmates at a mental institution. From the beginning, his life was marked. Sorry, my dyslexia kicked in hard there. His life was marked by violence and trauma. As he grew older, Freddy became a deeply disturbed individual, eventually taking a job as a maintenance worker at a preschool in the town of Springfield, Ohio. But behind that position, however, he lived a hidden life as a child murderer. Freddy abducted and killed multiple children, keeping trophies of his crime hidden in the boiler room. When the truth was discovered, the parents of Springwood sought justice. However, due to a technicality in the legal system, Freddy was released without conviction. The parents took matters into their own hands. They tracked Freddy down to the boiler room where he operated and set it on fire, burning him alive. As he died, Freddy made a silent transition, not into death, but into something else. In death, Freddy became more powerful. He returned as a being that could invade dreams. Within the dream world, Freddy had complete control. He could manipulate reality, distort perception, and kill his victims while they slept. If they died in their dreams, they die in real life. Freddy thrived on fear. The more his victims feared him, the stronger he became. He toyed with them, prolonging their terror before killing them. Over time, he became less of a man and more of a manifestation of nightmares, a presence that could exist between reality and sleep. Eventually, the entity took notice. A killer who did not rely on physical space, but on the mind itself. A predator who could invade the most vulnerable state of human existence. The fog claimed him. Within the entity's realm, Freddy Krueger became the Nightmare. His powers were made tied to sleep, pulling survivors into the dream world where he could stalk and attack them more efficiently. Through his abilities, though his abilities are shaped by the entity's rules, his nature remains the same. He does not just kill, he terrifies. And in the space between waking and dreaming, there's nowhere to run. 1, 2, Freddy's coming for you. Amanda Young, the pig. Amanda Young was a troubled young woman long before she became a killer. She struggled with addiction, self-destruction, and a lack of direction in her life. Eventually, her path led her to John Kramer, the man known as the Jigsaw. She became one of his victims. She was placed in a reverse bear trap, a device designed to kill her unless she could escape within a limited time. To survive, she was forced to kill another person and retrieve a key from inside their body. Faced with death, she complied and lived. That experience changed her. Amanda believed that surviving the trap gave her new purpose. She saw Jigsaw not as a terror, but as somebody who saved her, by forcing her to confront her will to live. She became devoted to him, adapting his philosophy that people needed to suffer in order to be reborn. Over time, Amanda became Jigsaw's apprentice. However, she misunderstood his ideology. Where Jigsaw claimed his traps were meant to test survival and offer a chance at redemption, Amanda began designing traps that were inescapable. Her methods were driven by anger, instability, and a desire to punish rather than to teach. Her mental state deteriorated further as she continued working under Jigsaw. She grew emotionally erratic and violent. Her loyalty to him became obsessive, and she struggled with feelings of inadequacy and fear of abandonment. Eventually, her instability led to her downfall. During one of Jigsaw's final tests, Amanda failed to follow his rules and was killed. But her story does not end there. The entity claimed her. Within the fog, Amanda Young became the pig. A pig head fused to her body, associated with Jigsaw's work and continuing the cycle of torment. Her traps reflect her distorted understanding of Jigsaw's teachings, forcing survivors into desperate situations where survival is uncertain. Amanda believes that she was reborn through suffering. In the entity's realm, she asserts that others are forced to face the same belief, whether they survive or not. So, I have a question for all of you. Any of you who are watching. It's only been half an hour. I've done the first 11 stories. Should I stop here? and stream Dead by Daylight for a little. Because it is called The First 11, and I have finished the first 11 stories. That did take a lot shorter time than I thought it would. So, do I want to stop reading the stories and leave part 1 at 11? Or do I want to keep going? How should I do this? What does everybody think? I know Gma might take a while to answer because she's going back and forth between the kitchen. If there's anybody else here, please do give me your opinion. I didn't think that, like, I thought that this would take longer, but then again, it was supposed to be very different. I think this is where I leave it. I'll leave it here, and then I'll restart stream and do Dead by Daylight. I think that's what I'll do. So, I thank you all so much for being here. I hope you have enjoyed my stories, and I cannot wait to see you all at the next story stream, and I will see you all in a few minutes.